Good afternoon, legatees. In my capacity as chair of the membership committee, it's my privilege today to welcome you to our first professional development evening of the year. The aim of the membership committee is to conduct 4 professional development events per year, and plus you'll get through the legatee online guide additional guidance in terms of building your knowledge base. So that comes out generally through the bulletin. Today though, it's my pleasure to introduce Ben Isaacs from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Ben has a background in the public service, having worked with the Ministry of Appeals Tribunal and the Veterans Review Board. He's now spent 18 years with DVA in Brisbane, so obviously has a wealth of knowledge about DVA services. And just talking to Ben a couple of weeks back at the ADF's medical discharge seminar, and again today, the thing I really appreciate about Ben is the compassion he has for our veterans and veterans families. So, welcome.
Thanks, Ryan. Hello, everybody. Look, firstly, thanks for taking the time out of your day, and thanks Legacy for inviting me along. We really cherish the opportunities to come out and talk about DVA, especially with all the initiatives that are happening and the way that we're transforming as a department as well. Is that all good? Yeah. So just a quick introduction about myself. As I said, I've been with DVA 18 years. I've done many roles in that time. What I'm currently doing at the moment is the Assistant Director of Client Access, and what that means is I lead a team of 50 in Queensland, 50 staff that provide shopfront services, so all our vans in Townsville, Maroochydore, Broadbeach and Brisbane here, as well as our on-base advisors nationally. So I've got responsibility for, currently we visit 42 bases, and we're looking to increase that in the near future with some initiatives that are happening in that space as well. So look, what I was going to do today was just talk about obviously the DVA budget for this year, talk about the new measures that have been introduced as well. Then talk about the family support package that's been announced for widows, and then also for dependents and veterans as well, given that you do provide that support to members with complex conditions and things like that. So, and then if I did have some questions on veterans home care, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about that, and also the coordinated veterans care program as well. But if anyone wants anything answered, please, if I can't answer it now, I'll take it on notice and I'll provide that back through Jackie, so that you can have that information or that question answered for you. Cool, okay. So just quickly, I won't spend too much time on this. So the 2018-19 DVA budget, 11.2 billion has been allocated in this year's budget for Veteran Affairs, and what that consists of is 6.2 billion in income support and compensation, and then 4.9 billion for health services. And 80 million has been allocated for commemorations both here and overseas as well. So, this will support at this, so at this point in time, as you know, our client population in Department of Veteran Affairs, the World War II era is starting to pass away, so we are losing, a lot of clients. But currently, that money that I talked about, that 11.2 billion, supports 288,000 clients, which consists of veterans, widows, and dependents as well. Okay, so some of the new measures that have been introduced, 16.1 million over the next 4 years for a veteran payment. I'm not quite sure if anyone's heard about this. Anything I'm talking about, if you know it already, please just tell me to move on, and I'll keep going. But, so 16.1 million over 4 years for a new veteran payment. Now what that's about is a veteran payment has been introduced so that somebody can receive financial assistance the day they lodge their claim with us. So the biggest criticism of DVA is that we're not timely and we don't provide that support in the time frame that is needed by the veteran or their family. So one of the things we are doing, obviously this veteran payment will alleviate any sort of financial concern until such time as we can get them under proper payment, which is incapacity payments. We've got 7.1 million over 4 years to extend support for families, and I'm going to talk about that in more detail shortly. 2.1 million over 4 years for an annual health assessment. So Again, not too many people know about GP Connect, but essentially when someone discharges, they've got up to 2 years to actually connect with a GP. We'll pay for that whole process so that they can commence a relationship with a civilian GP. $4 million over 2 years to pilot a case management service for transitioning and recently discharged ADF members, and that will start on 1 July. And $1.7 million over 12 months to undertake a scoping study to professionalise veterans advocacy. I don't know if you're aware or not, but there's a veterans advocacy, it's VA-SSS, so it's Veterans and Support Services scoping study that's occurring at the moment as well. That's looking into other models around around the world, so UK, Canada, USA, about how they provide that advocacy type support for both members and their families as well. And again, so there has been some concern that, hey, are you just going to pick up the Canadian model and run with it? No, we're not. We're going to deep dive into each one of those models and find the best aspects of those models, pull what we can from each, and then hopefully come up with the best model in the world. And look, as an aside, I guess, so our ADF, our Australian Defence Force, is the best capability. So we've got the best, weapons, gear, all that sort of stuff. We've also got the best remunerated soldiers, AM and Navy as well, so they are paid the best out of all the services around the world. And they've also got the best support system behind them in the form of the 3 acts that we administer at Department of Veteran Affairs. And as I said, so I might just quickly spend 2 minutes talking about our transformation journey we've been on. So as I said, we've been doing a lot of co-design work with our clients, of all our different cohorts, and the messaging we're hearing is, as I said before, we're not timely, we don't provide the support when we need to. Over the last 2 years, a lot of work's gone in and a significant investment from government up to the tune of $166 million so far. And what that's done is, so internally within DVA, it's given our staff the tools to actually do their job in an efficient and timely manner. To give you some examples, some people processing, say, loss of wage compensation, they may use 7 different systems to actually process that payment. And then we wonder why there's an error because there's human input into each one of those systems manually. So for that person in that role now, they actually only have 1 system and a whole lot of automation and manual calculation behind that as well. So things like that have been happening internally in DVA. Externally, you've probably seen we're increasing our support to transitioning members, particularly in that space. We've also created My Service. Has everyone heard of My Service? No? Okay, so has everyone heard of My Account? Yep. Okay, so My Service is eventually going to replace My Account. My Service at the moment has capability for lodging claims online, all types of claims for any type of person. What it's going to do eventually is it's going to overtake My Account and replace My Account. We're going to build up the capability in that. It's got agile technology. Now, I'm not an IT boffin, so I don't understand it exactly, but essentially what it is, it's an agile product. And the minute technology comes along, so where they're talking about facial recognition and things like that, they're going to build it into this to make claiming and dealing with DVA easier. So essentially it should get to the stage where you just put the phone up to your face, it recognises your face, and should go in there and you should have a one-client view of exactly every interaction you've had with the department. So that's where we're headed with that. And it's not going to be in the not too distant future. Like, My Service has grown rapidly over the last 9 months, and probably by about another year, it'll have full capability, and then it'll run alongside My Account until such time as we switch My Account off and it fully replaces that. It's just going to be a different look and feel, and the look and feel is going to be better for that. So, okay. Does anyone have any questions at all about budget? No? Oh, cool.
We get a pay rise?
Sorry?
We getting a pay rise?
No, but we do appreciate everything you do for the veteran community.
It's not like war widow.
Obviously the CPI increases and those sort of things will continue. So yes. There is no review into the rates of payments and things like that. But however, there'll still be those CPI increases there. Okay, so family support packages for widows and widowers. As a result of the Senate inquiry into suicide by veterans and the ex-service personnel, the constant battle suicide by veterans, this family support package was created. Now there's 2 types of family support packages. One is for veterans and their families, and the other one is for widows or widowers as well. So I'll talk about the widows and widowers first. So the package for widows and widowers consists of childcare for the children of MERCA veterans, counselling support following the death of their partner. Now I know everyone knows about VVCS, obviously. Yep. VVCS is always there, and this doesn't replace VVCS. This only adds to what VVCS can offer as well. So I'll go into the types of counselling that they're talking about. And the other thing is home help assistance in and around the home as well, for a period of time as well. Okay, so we've got a coordinated client support team. They will still be that single point of contact for any widow that has, their partner dies as a result of their service or as a result of their service-related conditions. So that still will continue, and there'll still be that single point of contact. What they will do is actually, so probably I should talk about who's eligible first, because it's only eligible. The person had to be a partner of the veteran at the time of death. So those relationships where exes and all those sorts of things, unfortunately they're not captured in this. However, the children are, children can still receive that support that's currently available now. The veteran rendered warlike service on or after 1 July 2004. So this is related to the new piece of legislation that came in 2004, the Military Rehabilitation and Compensation Act. The veteran's death was a suicide, or the veteran's death occurred on deployment in a conflict. So they're the two criteria that must be met for this additional assistance to be provided. So there's a few other things in this which I won't go into too much detail, but essentially the family needs to be assessed against the childcare, so the Commonwealth Childcare Assistance Scheme, so the CCB rates and all that sort of stuff. So when we're talking about childcare, it's what we will do is we'll actually, the feedback we were hearing is even with childcare and even with having a CCB rate and those sorts of things, there's still a gap to pay with childcare. We will pay that gap, and where a family's not entitled to any CCB, we'll actually pay that full gap. So basically, so that they won't have any additional costs for any type of childcare. And for many reasons, so that the partner can focus on employment or focus on rehab or focus on counselling, focus on things where basically they need their children looked after for a certain period to allow them some freedom to do what they need to do for their own sort of self. Okay, what I'll do is I'm going to provide some links, and I'll provide it through you, Jackie, just so that you can have further information on this, but I won't go into detail. But essentially, there's childcare providers have to be provided through mychild.gov.au. It can't be a family member or something of that nature providing this service. It has to actually be an approved childcare provider. Counselling. So I talked before about VVCS, and VVCS are always going to be there, not just for that immediate type counselling or crisis counselling that needs to occur. They do have a whole heap of programs that are on offer for, and as you know, their eligibility, they cover everybody, including grandparents down to grandchildren, out to stepbrothers, stepsisters. They do take into account, I guess, the contemporary family scenario. So not just, it's not just immediate siblings and mother and father, it actually goes out that one step further. And again, anybody can access that, and it doesn't have to be related to service. So it can be things like personal relationships in the family, it can be stresses relating to schooling, all that sort of stuff as well. So I wanted to just put that out there before I talk about the counselling. So in addition to that, the types of counselling that can be provided under this package is resilience counselling, grief and loss counselling, drug and alcohol counselling, personal and relationship counselling, parenting skills and support counselling, mental health first aid training so that they can be there to support their children, financial counselling, and also counselling for gambling and addictions of that nature as well. Okay, again, who can provide it has to be provided by a professional. Again, essentially the only criteria is, same with the use of gold and white card, it just needs to be a person who's registered with the Australian Medical Association. Cool. Okay, home help. So the types of activities that can also be included in this package is activities conducted within the home, so meal prep, cooking, cleaning, making beds and general tidying, laundry and ironing. Activities conducted around the home, so lawn mowing, gardening, cleaning gutters, cleaning solar panels, other external services, wood chopping and stacking, so those places, in the colder climates that do require wood chopping, that sort of stuff's included as well. Pool cleaning and removing waste from the home as well, so there's some examples of what can be provided under that. And again, home maintenance activities, so minor repairs around the home that require a use of a handyman, that sort of stuff.
For what period of time?
Okay, so let me just get that info for you. Okay, so it's nowadays it's all based on the need of the person. So an assessment will be done on the person or the family unit's needs. So I haven't been given details about any caps on that. So as far as this reads to me, the information that I've been provided is essentially yeah. Okay, so so the only restrictions on this is home help must be capped at a maximum of $482.50 per week. It can't be rolled over, it can't be built up and sort of, you spend 100 one week so you get to spend 900 the next. It doesn't work like that, it's per week. But there's no cap on time frame. So it's all about the family's needs. So as long as the family can demonstrate a need for this, and grieving takes time, and then also getting back on your feet takes time, and there's no time frames or there's no set formula for that sort of stuff. So the only caps is that it's $482.50 maximum a week can be spent on that.
A week.
A week.
So someone can come to my place and help me with my backyard?
Yes, if you meet the criteria for that.
Your husband had to suicide
or die on
die
active
in
service after 1 July 2004.
2004.
It's going to be the case.
After 2000?
No, has to have done warlike service
Yeah, one ago.
from 2004.
After 2004.
So not a Vietnam vet, for example.
Oh, what?
Right?
No, so this has only been brought in under the new legislation. Now that's why I'm going to talk about veterans home care.
The Vietnam vets get nothing again.
No. Okay. Look, as a DVA representative, I can't talk about individual matters in front of people because of the Privacy Act. So it's best we have a chat offline. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm fine.
Yep.
I'm just
Cool.
interesting.
Yeah. Look, it is there. Obviously, whether it be a war widow of World War II, war widow of a Vietnam era, every cohort has different needs, and this has been identified as a need of the younger war widow, that they need childcare, that type of assistance as well. Now, I'm going to talk about veterans home care in a minute, which I think you'll love that one. Okay, so look, there's a similar support package for veterans. Oh, sorry, before I go on with that, does anyone have any questions about the family package for widows?
I know it's not your area, but we have touched on it. 2004 is an interesting date, given that the highest PTSD comes out of Rwanda. Yet we've excluded it. So I know you're not a politician, but do you know why they came up with warlike service post 2004? That also excludes all of Timor.
Yeah. So look, again, I'm not the government, so I didn't make this decision. I'm just the person that has to administer the legislation. So the VEA and then the circuit, which is now called the DIRCA. Does everyone understand those two pieces of legislation? Okay. So the Veterans Entitlement Act came into being in 1986. 2 years later, the Safety Rehabilitation and Compensation Act came in 1988. Those were two compensation or workers' comp type legislation for serving members and ex-serving members, depending on their period of service. So certain periods of peacetime service over here under the Veterans Entitlement Act, plus mostly warlike or operational service, which covers off on Timor, Rwanda, Korea, Malaya, Vietnam, and earlier. Then you had the circa running over here, which was peacetime service. So for all those training accidents and all that sort of stuff that happens in Australia, people were compensated under this piece of legislation. Now, this one offered you a fortnightly payment with gold card or white card, plus limited vocational rehab. This one over here offered you incapacity payments, so a loss of wage compensation, permanent impairment lump sums, so lump sum compensations for impairment suffered throughout the body, and then also all types of rehab, so psychosocial, medical management, plus also vocational as well. So in, I think it was 2001, there was a review of military compensation and legislation, and basically, so yeah, many years too late, essentially, they decided to take the best aspects of both pieces of legislation, roll them into what's called the MRCA now, so the Military Rehabilitation and Compensation Act of 2004, and give people choices. So you can choose fortnightly, so under the MRCA, you can choose fortnightly payments, or you can choose a lump sum, you can choose a combination of both depending on your own personal circumstances. All types of rehab is now available under that new piece of legislation. So as I talked about, psychosocial, return to work and rehab, vocational and medical management as well. And then we've got white cards and gold cards under the both as well. So basically what they tried to do was pull the best aspects out of both Where there was differences, they put them together and gave the member or their family a choice depending on who the eligible person is. So that's the reason why the MERC has come into being. But yes, it's come about as a result of, I guess, years of campaigning and lobbying to highlight these differences between the two pieces of legislation. And for someone who had to work through that time and administer those pieces of legislation, it was tough telling someone. So two people standing in front of you, telling one person they're going to get this, and then another person they're going to get something, pretty much different. Sometimes better, sometimes worse, whatever the case was. And that's the reason for the But take your point and agree to some extent. Okay, so family support package for veterans and their families. Again, this arose as a result of that Senate inquiry I talked about recently. And essentially what it's doing is it's expanding childcare in specific circumstances, counselling again for the immediate family, and then also I guess rehabilitation in the sense of looking at the family unit and helping them sort of manage the finances, manage whatever that the member needs. So he's going to have, he or she's going to have complex needs in relation to their conditions, all that sort of stuff. So there's a whole lot of things in there that this package does provide for. Okay, so again, to be considered for this, so the member must have had an accepted MERC condition and have undertaken warlike service. So this isn't, nothing actually needs to occur on warlike service. The person just had to have been deployed at some point post 2004. They need to be eligible for in receipt of incapacity payments, so i.e. they can't work. And generally, as you know, with quite serious sort of IED accidents and things like that, the member is generally, or not generally, sometimes in a position where they've got quite complex impairment, significant impairment and complex injuries as well. So sometimes unable to care for themselves, which is why the family then has to start providing that type of care as well. So if they can participate in a rehab program, it's also a part of this eligibility that they do participate in a rehab program. But as I said, there are some members that physically can't do that, physically or mentally can't participate. They need to have an identified and justified requirement for childcare services. So as I talked before, it might be that the partner needs to find employment or needs to undertake some sort of study or whatever the case was, or the member likewise needs to attend for medical management or whatever the case is. Again, it's just about having an identified need. Now, we would have a rehab coordinator, so a rehab coordinator would actually make this assessment and say, look, this family would benefit from additional childcare or the additional supports that I'm about to talk about as well. So essentially we're guided by a medical professional advising us of what is, what this family needs. So I've talked about the childcare. Counselling is exactly the same again, so it's all about the types of counselling that VVCS doesn't provide. So it's an addition to VVCS as well. So it's again looking at those resilience, grief and loss, drug and alcohol, and personal relationship, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so and again, who can provide it has to be provided by a professional. Okay. So counselling services, the counselling service, the family can undertake or obtain 4 counselling sets, 4 of these types of programs per year, depending on what the family's need is again. And the way DVA operates nowadays, we actually do look at a person's needs, so we don't sort of cap it off and go, oh, okay, they really need this training, but hey, they've already sort of hit their 3 this year or whatever the case is. We will always look at a family unit on an individual basis and make that assessment. Obviously working with yourselves as well through this process with your clients.
So then, when you say the guide is a maximum of 4, that's not 4 sessions, that's 4 types of service? 4
types of programs.
With limited sessions within each program?
Look, it all depends on what it is.
Depending on the need.
Yep, and again, so what we would do, if more was required, we'd do things like involve VVCS. So the privacy barrier is there with VVCS, so anyone attending counselling and talking to VVCS about their issues or whatever the case may be, there's a very clear privacy barrier. However, we are working very closely when it's of mutual benefit to a client, and I say client, I mean veteran or their family. And the idea being that we both have the same aim of getting the person or their family back to the best health and well-being that they can be. Okay, and then just that reminder again. So what I'll do, as I said, with these family support packages, I'll provide links to through email, which will give you all that further information about all the finer detail in relation to that. So what I'd like to talk about now is veterans home care. I believe we had a query in relation to veterans home care, sort of just clarifying exactly what that is. What veterans home care is all about is helping someone maintain independence in living. So obviously trying to keep them out of an aged care facility, and for health and well-being, keeping them in their home as long as possible. So that's the intent behind the veterans home care. Now the good news is any person who has a gold card or a white card can be assessed for veterans home care. What can be offered under that? So personal care, showering, bathing, toileting, dressing, grooming, all that type of personal care type stuff. It may even be helping them eat, all that sort of stuff. Respite care, so we can also arrange for a respite care for the carer as well. So that's something that can also be provided under veterans home care. Domestic assistance, so domestic assistance with basic household tasks like dishwashing, vacuuming, mopping, all that type of stuff. Bill paying and unaccompanied shopping as well. Collection and cutting of firewood in remote and rural areas, and also some assistance with meal prep. And of course, the other big thing with this one is safety-related home and garden maintenance, so they can also provide that as well. So replacing light bulbs, changing batteries in smoke alarms, all that sort of stuff. The person will have to pay for the cost of the battery or the light bulb, however the work will actually get done and paid for by it that way. And things like after we have major storms, they can come in and clean up debris, all that sort of stuff as well. Now, it doesn't include major work, so let's say a widow has a house and the gutters all rusted out and needs replacing. That's actually, that's a building works type issue, so not something that could be covered for under this as well. Okay, personal care. The caps, so there are some caps on this one. Dependent care, you may have up to 1.5 hours per week from the Veterans Home Care Program. If you've got longer term high-level personal care needs, we actually have another program called the Community Nursing Services, which we can link in through that as well. And also, as I said, the Coordinated Veterans Care Program, which I'll talk about in a second. So domestic assistance, there's no strict limits on this. It's dependent on the needs assessed in relation to the family. So there is no cap on that one. The home and garden maintenance, so the safety-related home and garden maintenance, is up to 15 hours in a 12-month period. Yeah, and essentially that 15 hours kicks over after the next 12 months as well. What I'll also do, so there are some co-payments associated with this, and to give you some examples for the domestic assistance, there's an expected co-payment of $5 per hour. So DVA will pay whatever that person charges, whether it be $50, $60 an hour, and then we'd ask for a co-payment of $5 just to contribute towards that. To give you an idea of social assistance, again, they're all capped at $5 an hour. Respite care, there's no co-payment. Again, respite care is usually in a period, pre-crisis, and something needs to happen straight away, and it does without any financial assistance required. Okay, does anyone have any questions on the veterans home care at all? No?
Yeah. Given that it's related, in our perspective, mostly to gold cards, I presume it's not means tested.
No, it's not means tested at all. And some situations, so I can go into eligibility about, so I said before gold and white cards, and then entitled persons who have eligibility under the VDA, and partners or dependents under the MERCA. So entitled persons under the Veterans Entitlement Act is anybody, so anyone identified as either a veteran, a war widow or widower, and dependents as well.
Ben, so what's your relationship with My Aged Care? Because obviously for somebody over 65 that meets the My Aged Care eligibility criteria, could potentially double dip by requesting services through her gold card and then through her GP to get the ACAT assessment to get services under My Aged Care.
Yes. So there is no double dipping. Look, I do believe there is some sort of governance around that through Medicare in relation to Department of Human Services. So Look, I guess there is potential there to double dip, but I do believe there is some governance behind that. We have an aged care team in DVA that also liaises heavily with the My Aged Care team in DHS as well. Now that's more in relation to completing applications to go into aged care facilities and things of that nature.